Hello again, everyone. I'm here with Angus and Rhonda again, and we are continuing our ongoing series of conversations about thinking in the anthroposophical vein. And we decided to all come with questions that we had considered after our last conversation, which was last week. So, Rhonda, do you want to start us off?
For sure.
Well, I'm not sure we could call this a question, but I now you're recording, and I'm going to have to admit this in front of everyone that I kind of ironically, I would say, have been having some fun with AI and asking it the question that I'm always asking on my own little podcast: what might Steiner say? And so I asked AI, what might Steiner say about um, abstract thinking, and then specifically the WEF agenda, which the 2030, which AI corrected me that came from the UN, not from the WEF. Anyway, I wanted just to read the sentence that is at the kind of gist of what AI offered to me, which I love the sentence. And AI says that Steiner would say about both Wilson's 14 points and the WEF's 2030 agenda, they share the tragic arrogance of believing that human society is a mechanical clock that elites can tune from above rather than a living organism that must grow freely from the spiritual core of individual human beings. So from there, like, I'm very interested to revisit this whole thing of how abstract thinking is necessary for us and actually allows for freedom, which we talked about before. But I'm still interested to how to get from kind of A to B, you know, from taking that freedom that like the WF did take and how Steiner may or may not, we don't know what Steiner would say, he's not here, but he did say things about the 14 points. But this idea that human beings aren't to be directed from outside, they are to be respected for their individuality and all that. So, like, all those things are still kind of running around somewhat incoherently in my head.
Angus, do you have a response?
Yes, I do. I was really good actually that you posted the question and the complete answer that it gave in the email. From one specific angle, there were lots of ways you could pick apart the answer, but I want to emphasize it's like the positive aspect. It talked about how I can't remember the exact wording in the answer, but how Steiner might like see it negatively, or it's like criticize what's being said. But also the last 2 points were about where he would see value in
Yep.
that. And I think this is an aspect of the freedom question for me. This freedom question is huge and it's complicated, and I want to try and pick it apart in the context of the answer it gave. So one way of understanding freedom is that we are free to interpret these things as we like, and AI is sort of like we might just have a completely negative or a completely positive view on this. So these language models, especially because yours was a very, very brief question. You didn't, it was sort of like Can you remember exactly how you phrased it, Rhonda?
Yes, I asked two questions because now I've discovered that you can elaborate with AI. So
Yeah.
this particular two, I have asked it about abstract thinking another time, but these two particular questions that you're talking about that I emailed y'all, what would Rudolf Steiner say about the WES 2030 agenda? And
Okay,
then I asked,
stop, because that's the one.
oh,
That's just what I want to comment
okay,
on, and then you can tell us more about it. But so what, you haven't biased it in one direction or the other. You haven't said so like give me the critical version, or so like how he would interpret the positive. You've left it open, and that resonates with a free approach, that there's not a one way of interpreting it. We are free to interpret it. If we believe we have to interpret it in a certain way, then isn't that's anti-freedom in itself? So the fact that AI there can like help us with that process, I think is interesting and is valuable there. And you can. I was hinting at this in our last conversation, that depending on how you prime the conversation, you can encourage it to. It's like be more critical. So a phrase that I often stick at the end of my questions, especially if they're slightly long-winded, is comment on this critically. Okay, so try to give me a rounded answer rather than one that just it's like places me firmly in a bubble. I want to be able to move around. So how does that link into like other key interests of mine and ideas that Steiner talks about? I think his ideas about the different worldviews as a means of bringing thinking to life, the ability to move around. We won't go into the details, but the ability to be able to move around consciously to say, okay, this is this question from that perspective, but what would it be from this perspective? And what would it be from this perspective? Because when we practice that often enough, we create a mobility, a liveliness to our thinking. It's a liveliness. We are naturally attracted to certain ways of interpreting events, but those can ultimately become our slaves unless we consciously try to wake up out of them. And what I'm about to say isn't a criticism of what you just said, Rhonda. It's an observation. Steiner, it doesn't matter so much what Steiner would think about it. It's what can be thought about it. The fact that Steiner gives us so many interesting, unusual perspectives is fascinating. But if we're going to talk about freedom, we're interested in what Steiner says about it, but we're also interested about what Bob says about it and what Jill says about it and what lots of different perspectives say about it. Because when we can find a way of reconciling or see how they represent the different perspectives, that's also a way of freeing us from just having it's like a one way into the question. So I am so grateful that Steiner and his whole world conceptions said, look at me 30 plus years ago. I wouldn't want to be without that. But I also don't want to be restricted by it either. It's there as a ferment. It's there as a healthy springboard. So wrapping that up, we've got all of these different perspectives, but how can we actually start integrating them into our everyday life? Because all of these different people's perspectives, especially Steiner's, are all very interesting. But if we don't actually wake up within our own thinking, it's like, where is the freedom there? Where are the limits? Then it's still at an abstract level. So one of the things that I've been thinking about quite a bit this morning is what type of activities, exercises can we do to really wake up to these different types of things. We've used abstract, dead, living, etheric, conceptual, intuitive, all of these different types of thinking. But if those words are going to mean anything to us, we need to fill them with content. And how do we do that? By looking at how thinking and willing, so like, are always there in everything that we are doing. I don't. I can say more about that if there's any interest there. But that's something I've been thinking about quite a bit. The relationship between thinking and willing, and experiencing that freedom, I think.
Brooke, are you
No,
jumping in?
Rhonda, please share what you think.
Well, what I'm thinking right now is that to remind everyone that I'm a new Steiner student, and this is one of the reasons that I keep repeating to the two of you, maybe you should talk amongst yourselves, and then I can listen, and then I can come up with questions, because as far as other people's points of view and Steiner, I don't put anyone in the same category, Bob, nor anyone else in the neighborhood. So when the fine day when I have it straight for myself, how it is I want to think, or however one might put that, I look forward to that day, that I do care what Bob has to say and everyone in the neighborhood. For the moment, I've got no interest in hearing from someone as confused as myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like for me reading Philosophy of Freedom, which I did. And okay, the first time, right? There's 30 more in my future. But the fact is, I read it, and after chapter 5, I just, I was everything, just almost every paragraph, I'd be like, okay, now is he saying that's a confused way of thinking, or is that a clear way of thinking? I don't know yet. I can't figure it out yet. I'm not clear enough for myself yet. Yeah. So I'm interested in this, all these different points of view thing that I've heard about from Brooke before. And I believe that's true. But I feel like something I have expressed various times to you all, that I'm really way back here, So the things that I ask, they are, even as I listen to you, and I agree that this is a way for us to, be better or develop ourselves. That's the way I'm hearing what you're saying. I agree with you. And at the same time, it's almost like, what does that mean for me right now? Like, okay, that means what I keep saying to you all that would be better, which is that I just don't say anything for now, because I am confused, and I am way back here, and I don't care what Bob says. And I don't care about, I want to know what Steiner may or may not say. I want to know exactly what he did say, if he said something. And if he didn't, I do want to contemplate what he might have said. So this thing that you say, which I wouldn't disagree, that it doesn't matter what he said, it matters what could be thought, that's all great. And it's very far from, one might say, my willingness right now.
And that in and of itself is kind of an interesting psychological study, which is, as I've mentioned many times before, one of the things my mother said to me when I was a young girl who was, a child who was smart and a little bit frustrated at being in school with other students who I felt were less smart. She said, "Well, Brooke, you can learn something from everyone," and that's I also agree. Like Steiner's capacity to think and express all these different things is above and beyond anyone I've encountered, and we're probably all sitting here because we have a similar perspective. But and I've tried to find out if there's even someone whose body of work that was transcribed is as broad or as voluminous, and I haven't been able to prove that there was anyone else. So, in prior to the digital age, who knows what it is now? But all that said, Rhonda's first question goes back to how could abstract thinking be of any benefit, right? That was what you said when we started, Rhonda.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And so we're still trying. And so the reason, Rhonda, I think it's important for you to, participate in this is because this is like active learning. And it's active learning for everyone. Even if it seems to you like me or Angus have more perspective on it, it's active learning for everyone to go through the process of having conversation and working through the ideas together. Because, I just reread GA2 and GA3 this weekend, and of course, I learned stuff because it creates a different shape this time around. So, what is the potential benefit of abstract thinking? Do you believe it is possible that abstract thinking is, as we are defining it, this only type of thinking that we can do that is free of compulsion? Because that's the key point that gets you to that, believing that in that definition itself. And do you feel like you would believe in that definition or agree with that definition in this context, of course?
Are we talking to me?
Sure.
Oh, maybe we could talk to Angus about that right now.
Angus, what do you think?
Abstract thinking as free from compulsion. Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that somebody who has a lot of political power can't use their abstract thinking to compel others to do things, but that's a secondary step. We all have the ability to use our own abstract thinking free of compulsion.
So I've been revisiting chapter 9, the idea of freedom, a lot, and trying to gain more clarity around what he's getting us to do. He's getting us to think about what thoughts can live in us. And obviously these can be thoughts that are stimulated by the environment, thoughts that are stimulated about emotional states that we want to achieve. So we do things to avoid pain or to gain happiness or whatever, this type of thing. And then purely abstract thoughts. But then he says, so this is one way of understanding. This is one aspect of what leads us to act. But any concept, it's like let's take something really trivial, like what could it be? I don't know, a broken vacuum cleaner. So is there so having a broken vacuum cleaner as a reality, and I've conceptualized it's like this is a broken vacuum cleaner, blah 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 blah. There is nothing about that observation and that characterization with thought that obliges me to act in any way. It's sort of like a statement of fact. It always, whatever we thought is around us or in us, also so it has to, for it to produce action, it has to resonate with us. So that the example that Steiner talks about in the Philosophy of Freedom in this particular passage is where it's like the idea of going for a walk. If you associate that with that's like good health and enjoying yourself and being out in nature, then that idea that's like that just like it's like came to you or was suggested by your husband or wife or whatever, then it's sort of like, yep, we'll do that. But if you're also like if you're ill, well, that's not going to fly, is it? If you don't like taking walks, if you live in the town, there are so many factors in there that could sort of like allow that exact same idea to not produce any type of action. So what he's getting at here is this idea, which we obviously recognize from the Greeks, is part of being free is knowing who we really are. It's like how are these different ideas, whether they're abstract or compelling, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter, but for the sake of this conversation, for like any type of thinking, it's going to resonate in a specific way in me, and it's going to resonate in a different way with you guys because of who you are as individuals. And so how does this relate back to the central question of abstract thinking? That when we remove the compulsion, we've got the possibility of free activity happening because we choose. The thought itself isn't compelling us to do something. Perhaps if we take let's say we're part of a religious community, and we've got like certain traditions that have to be like maintained. Then those traditions, those ideas that like live within that community, it's like act as like a controlling force on certain aspects of my behavior. So in that sense, I'm not free. And unless I have like internalized them and sort of made them part of myself. So it's not a community that has forced those ideas onto me, but out of my own understanding of what those ideas, how they resonate with my own values, then they become something that work in me. But very often, this relationship is like instant between like certain thoughts, certain concepts, inevitably set off a certain chain of a certain chain reaction of events in me that lead to this or that action. And abstraction, getting back to like what you're saying, Brooke, is when we are dealing with abstract thinking, the main idea is that there is nothing compelling about them in themselves. But we've still got the other half of the equation, which is always us there. It's like, what are we putting into it? And if we don't know ourselves what we're putting into that abstract idea, then it can seem as if we're being controlled by it, but really we're actually being determined by an unknown part of ourselves.
Yeah. So back there, right there, that sentence, that's where I am.
Not being able to identify the part of yourself.
Well, just the current very deep longing is to figure that out.
Right.
Even know that that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like the beginning part of the philosophy of freedom is a person is free when they understand their own motives and where those come from. Right. Yeah. Now, can I add something about living thinking or etheric thinking, maybe to provide a contrast? And this has to do with something Angus said a couple of weeks ago, and also something that was in one of the later lectures in GA 215. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I didn't mark it, but Angus had said this thing we know about from Steiner, which is that in the first 7 years of life, the etheric is incarnating and forming the body, forming the physical body. And the etheric body of that is made up of, I think we can say, living thoughts. And so living thoughts compel in this very literal way. They are compelling the formation of the physical body. And now in, I don't know, maybe lecture 5 of GA 215, there's a line where Steiner, or a paragraph where Steiner's talking about, if you really develop the will around thinking, you cannot use that to affect the physical body. And I wrote down in a note, I was like, is he saying you can't use it for self-healing? Which is a very curious topic to me. I would like to actually dive into that perhaps in a future conversation. But it really sounded like, if you develop these skills, you have to use them purely selflessly, which means you can't use them to impact yourself. So just to bring that back, the way I understand living thinking as contrasted to dead thinking is living thinking literally compels, in the same way that the etheric formative forces literally compel something to happen in the physical world. Do you see it that way, Angus?
Yeah, and you got into like where these things really become tricky, because we can also experience somebody else's compelling thoughts compelling us to do something. So it's more like their life, their will, and this might be close to the UN's like 2030 goals that's like Rhonda's talking about. There's this sense that somebody's trying to insert their will into my own sacred space,
and that's like black magic.
Yes.
And so we recognizing what, or I suppose that's actually a very interesting question, is, has what's happened with these world global agendas been they use abstract thinking to create something new and free, and then essentially a sort of black magic to compel others?
Yes, and that's where the self-responsibility like really begins to weigh, because ultimately we've all got, through practice and understanding, like the resources to not fall for that black magic, to not feel like compelled to act in a certain way. And it's like one of the best defenses we've got is the one that Rhonda like instinctively feels when she reads it. It's sort of like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
That then awakens the question, should lead to, okay, so I have this really strong visceral experience of, I don't like what's happening here, but I need to take that deeper to understand how is it that they are, it's like, working this. I think black magic is good for the context of this conversation. Yeah. How are they trying to insert their will into me? It's like subconsciously, if they were doing it, it's like above board, and it's like presenting, it's like in clear thinking, it's like, what is going on here? I think as human beings would feel far more comfortable with that. But when it's subconsciously shoved down our throats and into our hearts and into our muscles, there's something, especially people who've got a healthy feeling life, they just go, no, there's pushback.
Right.
So I'd really like to hear what Rhonda has to say here. But so this living thinking isn't just, what I'm trying to get at here is, in a Steiner context, we often think about living thinking as purely positive. But what you're touching on here is, but it can be used. It can be negative when it's happening unconsciously in us if we're not awake to. Right. It's like the thoughts. It's like really awake to the impulse that's behind them.
Yeah, and I was wondering as you were saying this, like when we think of archangels and higher, or angels and archangels, I'm sorry, when we think of angels and archangels and higher, are they always functioning in living thinking, and it's only the good ones who won't use it to compel us?
I want to listen to Rhonda's answer first, and then I want to come back and give a direct answer to your attempt at an answer to your question there, Brooke.
Okay, I'm interested in that direct answer. I don't have much to say, Angus. I am, you know, back at wanting an example of living thinking. You know, this is what I mean. Like, I don't even really know what we're talking about.
Okay.
You know,
So what I think we could say is what that question that you asked, it was based on an experience. You'd read some UN like global goals, correct? And you had this instinctive reaction. I
yeah,
don't like this.
yeah. Is that me thinking
That is
livingly?
proof. That is living thinking working in you to the extent that it is trying to compel you. It's provoking. It's provoking a reaction in you. In that sense, it is alive. It's not dead. It's not abstract. It doesn't just land in you and sort of like produce no reaction. Instead, you got this strong defensive reaction. It's like, I don't like what's being shoved down my throat. That's the way I've understood how you've described this reaction. But perhaps I'm
No, that's
yeah. Can you complete the picture?
it's fair. I want to also just probably I could go on about how I don't understand living thinking, but I'm in the process of trying to figure that one out. So I'll just say that this thing that you talk about, inner freedom, this is a series that I would like to do on my own podcast to talk about to different people about what is inner freedom, because while I have all sorts of response like that in my life to many things and many statements and many blah blah blah, I know even at this early stage of Steiner study that the key for me is understanding inner freedom, because that resonates with me. Like, yes, I think that's true. I think I'm supposed to be having that. And I think that a lot of my frustration, is because I don't have it. I'm not acting in that way. I'm not hearing things and remembering that. So I really would like to, uh, I, let me just say, lately I have said to myself, maybe I'll come to this whole abstract thinking thing and like what's wrong with the WEF and what's wrong and what's wrong and what's wrong. Maybe I'll just park that, as you would say, Angus, which is a phrase I like, for a minute and, come around the bend over this way, because I'm tired of myself, I'm tired of my own frustration. It's so deep. It's so plaintive.
Right.
And I would like to come over here for a while and just go, okay, now what's this whole inner freedom thing? What does this mean for me? How is it I'm not understanding that? How does it that I don't know that's true for me? So where can I start? Where can I start this whole inner freedom thing?
Is this a question?
Well, no, it's really what do you call that? Maybe a rhetorical
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But I have been thinking about, that since listening to our last conversation, thinking about all this stuff and researching it and putting in these questions on the AI and whatever, some kind of something coming together over the last 4 years that I've been studying Steiner, and just going, yeah, man. I mean, hey, Rhonda, you could maybe cut short some of this thing for yourself. Some of this stuff you want to get to the bottom of, you could maybe just sort of don't forget about it, but work on something else for a while, which is toward this in
Mhm.
in a way that's maybe deeper, you know.
Right. And this ties into the whole, we talked about this a couple times ago, create your own reality and the general aversion to the cultural way that's presented. But of course, I think it was GA2 I was reading, and the version I had, um, it was page 54, and I marked down, it's like, oh my gosh, this is, in Steiner's language from the 1800s, this is the create your own reality formula. And because it is. And so the question I would ask you back, Rhonda, is do you understand what inner freedom means? Can you
No.
imagine what it means?
Yeah, I can imagine knowing my own motives. I can imagine it. Or maybe I can't yet imagine it, but I can, as we would say, maybe in the South, I can start to be fixing to start to contemplate thinking about understanding it. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, this answers your question, but I don't want to get too far away from the direct answer that Angus has for something that you said a while back, whatever
Wait,
that
the
was.
angel question? We can go back to the angel question. I wrote
Okay.
that down. But inner freedom. So, in addition to knowing one's own motives, I also think it's the ability to choose one's thoughts and choose one's feelings, and then to choose what one wills, right? Like you have to have all of those to have inner freedom. And so, I think it's actually fairly easy to know one's own motives
Hmm.
compared to the other three.
Yes, but there's plenty of room for deception there as well, or
Yes,
self-deception. Yes.
yes,
If you can be brutally honest with yourself, then absolutely. But
yeah,
it's a big if.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, certainly not something you record. It becomes a either an intimate conversation with yourself or with a very good friend.
hmm,
Um, Actually, perhaps on that, it's like a very good friend or an unrecorded conversation. If you recognize this story, cut me short. It's a story that I've told lots of times in my life because it's been so significant. But when I was first year at university, so I went to university a little bit later. I was 22. In the first year, I met this psychology student. Are you recognizing any of this? Good. Okay. So his name was Andre. He was from Sheffield, and I we started it's like just having tea and biscuits together. So I was studying in Plymouth. We'd buy like these boxes of broken biscuits, and we'd just like and drink. We would sit there for hours and hours and hours just talking about. I can't remember what we were talking about, but these conversations were something completely new in my life because he wasn't trying to win the conversation. He was just trying to describe what was happening in his thinking. And I do tend to be more chameleon in conversations, like adapting myself to how other people, it's like the rhythm of the conversation. And we we met like 2, 3, perhaps even 4 times a week for a 6 week, no, sorry, not 6 week, about a 6 month period. And what was so fruitful, so wonderful about this process, but I only realized it a long time afterwards, it's like years afterwards, what he was allowing me to do was to vocalize things that I'd never vocalized before. And because I'd vocalized them, I could actually say, Angus, do you really believe that or not? Do you know what I mean? And that's where the value of conversation becomes really real, because you can have these imaginary conversations with yourself. Also, like it's like bouncing questions backwards and forwards about what is going on here and trying to read. But there is something about a live conversation with somebody else where you really can speak openly and honestly, and it's not about trying to prove I'm right
yeah,
and you're not, or whatever. It's just about sharing. And then these moments come out where you get this like self revelation. Shit, I didn't know I thought that. Do I even really think that? It passed. Something sort of like caused it to like come out of my mouth. But once it's out there, I can actually say, do I agree with what I actually said? And that is part of what I think is it's a really healthy process in any form of self-development, that you've got a way of getting it out like in the open. People use diaries. There are lots of different ways of like developing this process, but we've got to get it out of ourselves so that we can actually like say, do I really think that, or do I think there is another way of seeing things? Yeah. So before we talk about angels and things, those type of conversations. So I identified. I'm not saying they didn't happen before I was 22, but it's like there was a particularly like focus periods of 6 months, the beginning of university, when something really shifted and I became conscious of what was going on. Is that a process that you recognize, are involved in, have been involved in?
Me?
Either or, doesn't matter.
Go, Brooke.
Well, yes, I definitely recognize it. I deeply, deeply value the conversations that we have. Rhonda and I, when we're in the same place, we often will have a latte together in the morning on the farm and, talk for like 2 hours. And so that's an example of one for me. And then the study groups we have. And then I have a very dialogue heavy relationship with my husband, meaning we talk about our thoughts all the time. So we get to have that with each other, which is probably, and I think we both feel this way and have said this, is like one of the best things about a marriage that works is it is an extremely long, complicated conversation. And you can't really have that unless you're married to someone or have a deep, intimate, committed relationship that extends years, because it takes so much time.
Yeah. I mean, yes, the answer for me is yes. I don't know how to say the intimate partnership, which I have dabbled in, but don't seem to be doing that anymore. This late stage in my long and checkered life. Who knows how related that is to not being willing to work out shit with people over a long period of time. But my whole life a feature in friendship has been, if not having them, then longing to have conversations at this level with, just like the only kind of conversation I'd really want to have, but it's not that usual. It's only when I came across Steiner and you guys, Brooke, and moved to the farm and study, and am I getting my fill finally of that kind of conversation? And the other aspect I'll mention that I have come to understand in my own life, Angus, is that I had a journal since I was 12, and about 10 years ago had a big project where I took those 5 boxes of journals that I had been lugging around my whole life, and went and did a camping trip down in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which is very beautiful. And nobody was there. And I read through them. I took a week and I read through them all. And I burned them, at the end of it. And then why did I do that? Well, one, I've moved a lot and I was tired of moving boxes. But really, it was just that, like, I came to this thing of like, I'm done. Wah, wah, wah. Rhonda, like, enough of that. Not that I shouldn't have done it, just that, like, okay, I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and now I'm going to do something different, and this was before Steiner. Like, what am I going to do different, Rhonda? Well, I don't know. I never really did it in earnest, like as far as a discipline thing, but I started to write fictional things, that were like about possibility, or about conversations between people. And it's always an interface, it's always kind of a clash, but in a fun way, because I just want to have fun with it. I don't see why you can't, even if you're talking about serious things and people who think really differently. But so I started to do that. And then with the Steiner stuff, like finally I'm like, oh, okay. Now I'm getting help with turning it all to positive, but not like Pollyanna, like seriously positive, like
Mhm.
seriously. This is what you have to do if you want, if you want something good, something true to
Mhm.
emerge at some point, on the deepest level I'm can, like, that are within my capacities, like, yeah. So I don't, blah blah blah. That's
Mhm.
my answer to that.
I do wonder because of course I grew up in with a mother who was a Waldorf teacher. So I grew up with some aspect of anthroposophy in my life, even if it was in the background. But it does sound to me from Angus, your experience that, when you were a young man, and Rhonda's description that maybe this type of conversation is pretty rare outside of, or it's cultivated by anthroposophical circles.
Yeah.
And the term that I learned that we call it is Goethean conversation. Is that a term you know,
Yeah.
Angus?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And maybe you don't know this, Angus, but it's an interesting aside. There was a woman who was quite old in the early 2000s. Her name was Marjorie Spock, and she lived in Maine. And she was one of the few people, in this part of the continent who had ever actually met Steiner in person. And she wrote a booklet called Goethean Conversation. And because she lived in Maine, my mom was able to go to several, study groups with her before she died, before Marjorie Spock died. And so we thought that this idea maybe came from her, but I don't actually know where the source is.
The
But
term,
yeah,
yeah.
the term, but then it's clear like the activity of these focused conversations. Yeah, it's present in anthroposophy. And I also was reminded last time I read the fifth gospel that one of the key turning points of Jesus' life before the incarnation is these series of conversations with his mother. And so for Steiner and his perception or his insight to describe those as a turning point in the life of Jesus, a conversation or a series of conversations really highlights the importance of what it could be, what it can be.
Yeah, and I'll just throw it in there really quick that the difference, before Steiner, or there it was the psychological, the Western psychology kind of depth of conversation. At some point, it's always like you come to what's wrong with people, what kind of pathologies, explain people's behavior. And
Yeah.
even before Steiner, I mean, I'm not saying I didn't do that or engage in that, but it was always something in the back of my mind, like, well, what is, okay, so the bottom line of this conversation is so and so's a narcissist. All right, so, well, to me, that's just a sophisticated way to call somebody a name.
Yes, it is.
So what's the point of that? Like, now we solved something? What are you going to call me next? What can I call you? So it's like, just to repeat, like, the longing has always been like, what
Yeah.
level can I talk on? How can I, really, like, fix some stuff for myself?
Yeah.
That's wonderful what you just said there, Rhonda. And it ties back to something we were talking about last time. Perhaps we can develop it even further. But when we categorize Aristotle's categories, the devil being the accuser, i.e., the categorizer, it's like one of his names. What we're doing is we're splitting up the world. and we think we're solving the problem, but we're not until we begin to
Yeah.
actively try to stitch it back together. And if everybody is there, so like doing the name calling or the predicating or the accusing or the categorizing, what's the process that's going to undo all of that separation? And I think what the three of us are indicating here is a very strong contender for us. Like, one of the most important things that you can do there is have a healthy conversation.
Yeah.
Where you share, and initially you start as understandably from possibly three different perspectives, but then you realize how perhaps they are variations on the same, it's like, essential thing. And this maps exactly onto this idea of when we have a concept, and Steiner will use the examples of a triangle. Says a triangle has an infinite number of different forms, but in its essence, it's the same. And if we all have the essence of the triangle, or if we all have the essence of a healthy conversation, it's like underlying it, then what is going to come out is a recognition of how of what initially seemed like three very diverse perspectives were actually a rich way of describing exactly the same phenomena. And I think that is what happens in a healthy conversation, where you've got possibly even strong diverging opinions at the beginning, or strong diverging perspectives. But the art of the conversation will allow us to recognize, aha, yeah, we have been talking about the same thing, but from different perspectives. So ultimately, even though those words wouldn't have passed necessarily over our lips, we can feel ourselves like agreeing that that is also another good way of saying what we think. And that's why I think I think it is. You were talking earlier about, so like, you feel like you've only been doing this a few years, and Brooke and I should have these conversations on our own. I don't think that.
Yeah.
Because if we're working from the same essential ideas, it doesn't matter. It's the richness of the conversation is finding how they converge, these ideas, and each one reinforces the central idea that's there.
Yeah.
Apologies if that was like a little bit abstract, but it feels real to me, this idea that we can approach exactly the same idea from multiple different perspectives. And ultimately, if we do that in a healthy way, we go away from that conversation not thinking, oh, why didn't I argue that point better? Or why did I? It's sort of like, God, that was a nice conversation.
Right.
Life feels a bit richer now.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to stop mentioning about how I shouldn't be part of conversation.
Okay.
Good.
While we're on this little divergence of, concepts that make up ideas and unifying and separating, can I show the drawing that I made this morning? It's very simple. That has to do with GA2 and GA3. You're seeing this?
Yes.
Okay, so this brings up a question that I'm bringing after our conversations in prior weeks. I heard myself saying, like when we were talking about Tesla and how he was able to see things in front of him, or when we're talking about mathematical stuff, I was saying, I think those are perceptions. And then, rereading GA2 and GA3, I was like, okay, how is Steiner using the term perception? What I'm trying to say is, I think those are I still want to say perception of the given with the idea unified in front of a person. And I would even say the same for Mozart. So let's say that he's hearing the music of the spheres, and he's also able to, because he has probably a physiological capacity, he has that capacity to take in that experience of the directly given music of the spheres, and through his ability, we can call it cognition, he can process that through his body. So he's able to reunify what's separated. and present something back. And with Tesla, he's perceiving these potential ideas or concepts about mechanical or electronic objects, and he is able to take the given with the idea inherent in it and process it around, separate it, and then bring it back together and process it through to something that other people can perceive. That's why I kept saying it was a perception.
Mhm.
Does that make sense to you both?
Absolutely. And just to like further support what you're saying, that Steiner does talk about that it's like thinking presents itself as a percept
Yeah.
as well, so that we can become
Right.
conscious of it. So yeah,
Okay.
the
And so,
given.
yeah.
Yeah, carry on.
What the question that I'm left with after reading these two books is, what part of any of it is me or I or the individual? Because the ideas and the concepts are out there, they're inherent in the given.
Mhm.
And my thinking is the only thing that I can do to, separate out the ideas in the given and then to reunite them. But the ideas and the concepts aren't mine. The only thing that might be mine is my thinking. Is that how you understood it?
Can I ask? Are you asking like what part of is free?
Well, no, what part is mine? What is, because I experience this as other people do. Oh, some thought enters my head. That's not really mine. That's something else.
We're getting close back to the angel
Yeah.
territory, but
Yeah.
so like let's start like as an attempt at an answer to your question.
Yeah.
Thinking is perception. So when I say what part of me is the tree, I don't say that. I recognize it as its existence. It's like it's separate from me. I close my eyes and I don't think so like it's disappeared. It has for me, but the tree out the window is
Yeah.
still there. So what Steiner's doing in the first 7 chapters of Philosophy as Freedom is getting us to wake up to, we would not think, thinking is revealing, it's like the hidden reality behind everything. So let's take something it's like fairly simple. Apples have been falling off the trees since Eden, of course.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until so like Newton came along and so like says, "Aha! I see a law. It's the law of gravitation."
Yeah.
So there have been billions and billions and billions of observations of apples falling off trees, but it wasn't until he saw, it's like in anthroposophical terms, with etheric thinking, with what you can see in the etheric, you see the concept. It's like the thing that would never be obvious just by observation.
Are you saying that's etheric
It's
thinking?
the hidden. It's the hidden that's always there. Yeah, I mean, concepts are. It's that part of reality that is always there, but you can't see.
And
What
so,
you see it with, you see it. You don't see it with the light of the sun. You see it with the light of thinking,
mhm.
and that is given to us in our etheric body. Or that it comes through into our etheric body and then it's like it dies on our brain type of thing. But it's thinking is or thinking is an organ. It is perceiving something that is real. But in when we look out the window, we don't have to consciously sort of like think, I'm going to look at that tree and I'm going to observe that tree and I'm going to recognize that tree. This is a passive process. It's like open my eyes, see the tree is there, and there's a percept in front of me. That isn't the case any longer for us with thinking. We actually have to want to know what it is that we are seeing. Um, perhaps this is another way of uh, another word picture to describe. Sticking with the tree. So the tree has got its etheric body there. It's producing all of this growth, but I will never be able to see it with light, with normal sort of like sunlight bouncing it off there, despite the fact that it is always there.
Yeah.
It's the underlying reality that's causing what I am causing to come into being what I am seeing. But initially, I can, with conceptual thinking, abstract thinking, know that there must be some force there. It's like creating the reality of the tree. What is it about an oak tree that makes all the oak leaves? It's like somewhat identical, but never identical. What is it that's like ensures that an oak tree's bark always is more or less like this? And that governs it's like where its branches are, etc., how deep its roots go, what height it grows. So those are that there is some underlying, let's call them constellation of laws determining what is an oak, but we cannot see that,
Right.
even though indirectly we know it's there. Initially, we grasp it conceptually. And then obviously, it's like Stein will say that once we reach imaginative consciousness, what we have seen, what we have known through the intellect to be there, or through conceptual thinking to be there, actually becomes it's like a lived experience of actually seeing the etheric forces working in the tree. They are always there, but those thoughts have to sort of like live in me first before I can recognize that they must be out there in the tree.
Right.
But those aren't my inventions. They are what Steiner calls intuitions. It's like I'm waking up in the etheric world to the realities that are in that world. Sorry to keep on going, but I think the analogy with sight is really good. If I walk into a dark room and it's full of objects, I don't know there are any objects until I turn the light on. I could walk around in that room and feeling, oh, that there's a something there and there's a something there, and I might be able to guess what they are. But for example, I would never be able to guess what color they are.
Right.
But I can draw certain conclusions about what is in the room. But somebody switches the light there, and then there's a whole new reality that was always there to be seen once the light was shining in. Thinking is that same. It's useful to think about thinking in exactly that same relationship. As I wake up in my thinking, this isn't something purely subjective. A light is going on in me that is allowing me to see things that I would never see just with my senses. And eventually, they become real, direct experiences through imaginative consciousness. Does that feel like it's answering your question, or have I missed the point completely?
Oh, no, that feels accurate. And so, that's the reason for the pencil exercise or something like that, is you direct your thinking towards the simple object in preparation for the concepts revealing themselves, which they do, obviously.
Yes.
And then at some point, you're trusting that the living concepts will reveal themselves.
Yeah.
So can we just, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, so this pencil exercise, can we just spend a minute or two there to sort of?
Yeah,
definitely.
So the pencil, and I look at it and I go, okay, this is made of wood. The wood came from a tree somewhere. Eraser is rubber. That's some other tree. Somebody had to go and scrape it off the tree. Right, is what we're talking about, right? So help me understand, uh, the what the concept in that is what? Like what is the
So
concept in like
concepts are the little discrete things that you have a realization, not a realization. Concept are the little discrete understandings that you have. An idea would be a constellation of concepts. So that's the lingo we're using. This is just terminology.
so for the pencil, the
So for
concept
the idea is writing instrument,
got it.
let's say. That's one of the ideas. And the concepts are the the rubber is one concept or the wood is another concept. And these can get more and more discrete.
Rubber is a concept. It's not like a material that you scrape off a tree.
Well, your perception of it as a thought, that part is the concept.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so there's a way to do the exercise where one does it kind of mechanically, such as, okay, I know this is made out of plastic. What do I know about plastic and how it's made? And I know about ink, and and I go through it in a mechanical, memory oriented way. And then there's another way to do the exercise, which is I am observing this and waiting to see what it actually reveals to me. And if you do this exercise consistently, you'll start to experience both of those things happening simultaneously. And I've never had it, like reveal into full living thinking. Let me be clear. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying that I've had this experience with physical made objects plenty of times where I don't know exactly how it's made, but I can observe it and I can perceive how it's made. And it's not a mechanical memory process. It's the object revealing something about itself.
And there's another important aspect to that exercise, and actually this is true for all of the 6 exercises. What you're doing in that pen exercise and any of the other exercises is you are exercising your will.
Yeah.
It's not instincts that are sort of like, or memories or some other unconscious part of you that's sort of like saying, think about me, da-di-da-di-da. It's your will, so like saying, for X minutes, I am going to do my darndest to just stick with this thought. Mm-hmm. And that's the essence of meditation.
Yeah.
I mean, it is no difference. It's and this is not the only place, but this is one of the essential aspects of thinking, is that it is my will that is being done, not some unknown will that's like passing through me. And I think it's just me, but I have to practice actually using that will. Yeah. So when I decide I'm going to hold a certain thought for X minutes, then there's nothing in the world that obliges me to do it apart from my own decision to do so. And the more often we practice, this is what I am going to do, and then perform it, that is an act of freedom in itself. And out of that, when you get deeper into the exercises, you experience this idea of receiving something that you could never have, you didn't know before. And then, but once it comes to you, you go, but of course it is like that. That connection that I never saw, of course it's like that. So it's really good what you did from my perspective, Brooke, about talking about the concept and so like the activity that's going on there, but it's the will.
Yeah.
And I think this gets back to what you were talking about half an hour or so ago, Rhonda, about getting to know, it's like, what is. I can't remember exactly how you phrased it. You said you wanted to move on. You burnt all your books because, can you remember the expression you used?
I was saying something like, wah, 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 Rhonda, you've done enough of that kind of introspecting psychological, like why this and why that and then this and then that, which is, I'm not putting it very nicely to myself, because this is it's probably good, it was good I did that, but it started
It's
to
time to
sound,
move on. Your will sort of like said, I need to do something. I need to do something else.
I guess that's what happened. I don't know, it just sounded like it all, when I was reading, I was like, yeah, like 4 books ago I was doing the same thing, and now I'm doing it again. And it's just like, at some point something else has to happen here. I mean, this isn't interesting anymore.
And this is where waking up the will becomes so essential. This idea that I have to make a change. I recognize that there is something that I don't like, that is wrong about whatever it is that it's like specifically happening in my life, and I want to change it. If I don't have the will, the will force, the power of the will to actually change, then I am stuck in that loop, that infinite loop forever. I'm writing diaries until the day I die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Or
it's
it's
a
like I'm
kind of,
stuck in Nietzsche's like the eternal return, just
Yeah.
like doom. It's like on a doom loop. Instead of doom scrolling, I'm just like I'm in my own doom loop.
Yeah.
And
it's a kind of wallowing,
Yeah.
is what
yeah,
I said to myself. And people, I mean, it's encouraged in my culture. Wallow, wallow, wallow. Other people's fault. Wallow.
Right.
You know.
Right. There's a whole strata of American culture and probably European culture which encourages that. But we're not participating in that.
we recognize it as real, but we try not to be.
Yeah.
Well, I never thought of it, as like any kind of consciousness, Angus. With any kind of consciousness of oh, this is an indication that I need to work on my will. I mean,
But now that you hear it phrased like that, does it make
it
sense? What I'm saying?
yes, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, my Lord in heaven, we just decided in this other little gathering that we're doing, Brooke and I and some people, of for other reasons, to do these will exercises that are the simplest things on earth, even simpler than the pencil exercise, which is to just pick one thing you're going to do at one time of day. It could be anything, just
Right.
like I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm totally failing. Well, I'm 80% failing, and which is fine, but it's amazing how difficult these things can be at first for me. Just like, wow.
Yeah. How much resistance there is there, but you didn't know it was there until you started fighting against it.
Yeah.
Yet, let me point out, Rhonda has done the 10-day Vipassana retreat thing. Rhonda, do you want to describe that? Because I feel like this has to do with meditation and will.
Well, it's a Vipassana is a certain
Okay.
kind of, yeah, right. Vipassana, I think, is the correct way, but I never say it right. But yeah, so I went and did it once, and it was really something. And that was maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. It was a while ago. So yeah, it's just you're doing nothing 10 hours a day, but you have to try and stay awake and not move. And it's very profound practice. Yeah, but I mean, I think, I don't know. I did it. I didn't. Some people, I mean, it really freaks some people out,
Yeah.
and it's very hard in some way that it really wasn't that for me. I mean, it's just physically difficult to sit still for 10 hours in the day, so it's difficult on some level, but like some people kind of freaked out psychologically for it. But that wasn't my experience. It was cool and interesting, and I came away going, well, I think I understand a little bit the nature of desire. That's basically what I felt like I learned out of that 10 days, because even the simple thing to say that you're sitting and your leg hurts, and all you want to do is move your leg because that's going to relieve your pain. But the practice is to try not to move, so if you do that for hours and hours and hours a day. For me, that seemed to be a practice to kind of have a lot of understanding of what desire is all about. Because on top of it, when you do move, it's not really what you wanted. Like, it doesn't really fix things. It's not really that you think that you long for above everything. It doesn't. It's not really the panacea. You know what I'm trying to say? Anyway, it was interesting. What else should I say, Brooke?
Well, I was trying to connect it to the will exercises because
Oh,
what do they tell you to do with your thinking during those 10 hours?
yeah. You're encouraged to do a kind of a focus of it.
Focus on the
Well,
like
for
part of your
the
body.
first
Yeah.
3 days, you focus on the breath hitting your upper lip.
Yeah.
I apologize to Vipassana people if that isn't how it. This is my memory of it, because there's instruction coming. The one that I did, which was in Massachusetts in Shelburne Falls, and it's a certain guy that it's all built around, who isn't with us anymore. But so his instruction comes to you through the loudspeakers, and yeah, it's a constant returning to your attention. It's a practice of where is your attention. Yeah, and willing, I guess, your attention in a certain
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah, trying to not let all thoughts and memories and all these desires and all these type of things to interfere with your concentration.
Yeah, and it's more instead of fighting it, it's just that whole kind of thing, the language of just let it go. Okay, so it comes and then it goes, and every time you notice it, return your attention. Return your attention when you notice it, which is the whole thing, because 40 minutes could pass before you realize, oh, I'm not attending to that anymore. Oh, whoops. So it's just kind of interesting that
Right.
it seems simple. Put your attention on the breath coming out of your nose, but that's very hard to maintain for hours and hours and hours. So it was a good practice. I could see. I tried to keep it up, but not my thing.
Yeah. Okay. Did anyone else bring other questions now that we're an hour and 20 minutes in?
I know someone else.
And we should wrap up within 20 minutes because I have another thing that I could.
Shall I have a go at
Yeah,
back
please.
to the etheric and angels? So in GA17, The Road to Self-Knowledge, which is a series of meditations, Steiner, it's very interesting that he, in the first lecture, not the first lecture, the first meditation, I think it's actually from memory, it's meditation 10. He's talking about forces that expand and forces that contract. It's like living as part of the reality of the etheric body, and that these forces that they have a legitimate role in the etheric world, because one of them is essential for the sense of self-consciousness or consciousness of self, I consciousness, and the other one is the freedom to not be entrapped by, and this idea there's this healthy tension between them in the body, and that is good there. That's healthy. And he then goes on to say that but if these forces spill over into the realm of the physical body, then actually they begin to work unhealthily. So in the etheric realm, these are necessary and healthy for the development of I consciousness of the human being. But then if they get if they develop to a reality in the physical body, then you have tendencies that lead to like egoism and the inability to to change, to be stuck in oneself, or the tendency to not be able to to have any conception of oneself because you're always dissolving. And so he's talked about this in Meditation 10. And then 11 and 12, he gives them names, and those names are obviously Lucifer and Ahriman. It's exactly the same. But what is really interesting is he's creating purely conceptually these ideas of healthy forces working in the etheric, but that outside of their sphere of influence, they become unhealthy. Only later does he add the names Lucifer and Ahriman to what you've already conceptually grasped.
Yeah.
And I do find that interesting, but because of tendencies amongst anthroposophists to fixate on Lucifer and Ahriman rather than what are these forces, how do they live in us, when do we become conscious of them? Because it's not about banishing them. It's about having the Christ within that can find the healthy balance between both of these forces which are needed. The Ahrimanic for the concentration for the will, for the concentration of oneself and self-consciousness or I consciousness, but it's with the freedom that's part of the Luciferic, which is the dissolving, never being too fixed. It's in one's ways or in one's thinking, so that one can't actually grow beyond them.
Yeah.
So finally, coming to the angels thing, in Steiner's lecture, and this we have, I believe, talked about before. I think it might have been even in our first conversation when I told you about how when I read how the angels work in our astral body, I said that I didn't think I was ever going to reach Steiner again at that point.
Right.
But so what's at the essence of that? Obviously, I didn't know myself then. I didn't know what destiny had in store for me. But so he's got something very similar going on there. He talks about when angels are working in our astral body, and if we wake up to their activity there, then this is part of leading humanity forward on its healthy path. Yeah. And he talks about what does he talk about? The ability to recognize the divine in everybody else, fellowship of man or brotherhood of man, and the ability to have freedom of thought. So it's the ability to conceptualize spiritually. But he says that if humanity doesn't wake up to these impulses in the astral, then the angels will perform their work in the etheric body, where they become deeply destructive, or have the potential for becoming deeply destructive in humanity's further development, because the angels are saying, wake up. And what does he talk about? He talks about the perversion of sexual forces, which I think is really interesting. If it's a very interesting lens on how society has evolved in the last 100 years, especially in the last 50 years. He talks about medical as well. It's
yep,
deeply fascinating there. And then about mechanical forces or mechanical occultism, which is more difficult to understand and can be interpreted in lots of different ways. But it's very interesting how these healthy forces in one sphere, when they begin to act in another sphere, they can become deeply, or they can become very destructive for those people that aren't waking up to those forces, and understanding that as a mechanism, like in the evolution of consciousness, I think is really interesting. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And I guess I want to ask, are are you connecting that to when the angels are making pictures in the astral body, that is them inserting living thinking, or when they are forced to work in the etheric body, that is them inserting living or etheric thinking? Like what? And perhaps I'm trying to have too specific an interpretation.
Let me could we come back to that question? Let
Yeah.
me have a think about it. There's a couple of ideas bubbling there, but yeah, after it's like looking at some of my answers from last week, I think it'd be where I was sort of like only half satisfied with my answer. I'd prefer to sit
Yeah.
sit with the thought and then hopefully come back with something good next week. But I would like to reverse the question, because the question perhaps came from some of your own thoughts. Did you, if you were given that question, and somebody's like pushed you for an answer, would you be able to give one, or what are your own thoughts?
Well, my inclination would be, because, and this is just from like working through GA 215, and Steiner's work in general, is okay, when it's in the etheric body, that's imagination and that's etheric thinking. And when it's in the astral body, that's inspiration. Maybe that's inspiration thinking or astral thinking. Like maybe there's another level that should be understanding, and so on when it's in the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can both
Yeah.
think on that and see. It's this living thinking that because if we've described abstract thinking as no compulsion, then living thought thinking can be is any thinking that's got an aspect of compulsion, but we haven't distinguished between healthy and unhealthy. Right. I think it's something that we need to tease out.
And so the picture is the good angels can't do anything unless we're asking for it. And yet in that lecture, the angels are trying to put pictures into our astral body that will be beneficial for us. And some people, of course, are asking for that all the time. Yeah, there's a lot of questions I would like to ask someone. And so this also came from my question, which is going back to that picture I showed, but like, what is mine? Is anything that's coming out of my, internal experience mine?
And doesn't it have to be for this whole co-creation?
Yeah, it does. So where's the line? Like, where am I to understand this? And where is the action of the guardian angel or higher self? And is that mine or is that not mine?
Okay, so let's go back to the description of the etheric that I was talking about, the understanding of the self versus the dissolving forces.
Yeah.
If I get uniquely focused on what appears to be mine, I lose all contact with the way in which I am participating in the universe. If I completely forget myself and believe myself to be just participating in the universe, that I've gone too far in both directions. The healthy path, the way it appears to me, is a recognition that I am both myself, but I am only myself through participating in something that is working through me. And Steiner, one of these ways that he's firmly like fixes this idea is it's like it thinks in me rather than
Mm.
I think. It feels in me rather than I feel. It wills in me rather than I want. And recognizing that both I feel and it feels in me are true,
Yeah.
not one or the other. And the same with thinking and the same with willing. And when we experience that as something that is harmonizing as opposed to something that splits me, then I found the center where it's like both aspects of reality are true, and I don't feel it's like pulled apart by them. I don't feel separated, and I don't feel it's like uniquely so like parked in one polarity or the other.
I wonder right now if like one of those polarities would be called religious and the other would be called new age.
It depends what you mean by religious. In the way you've constructed it, religious would have the Ahrimanic.
Yeah, I guess I'm more precisely thinking like one or the other would be a fragmentation, right? So one only thinking though that the one is true, like I make it all happen. That's new agey to me.
Mm-hmm.
I make it all happen. And then there's this other one where I don't make anything happen
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it's all someone else. That's religious. That's what I'm calling religious. I don't know what the right word for that is. I don't know. I just now had that thought because it's this usual thing with me in the past of being frustrated. But now I'm being helped, because it's like I can have language to say, oh, that's less aggravating and more just fragmented. And this is kind of what you're saying when you say that, and whereas before it was I'm not aware of what it is that it means when you say that, like I create, you create, we create. So it's so great, for me to have rather than be like, okay, I'm going over here to Judgmentville and I'm going to just stay there, rather than doing that, just be like, oh, that's that thing where you're speaking to me. Okay, this is a fragmented way to look at the human being, and the
We need
complement
to
to
find
that,
that
or the
center position.
polarity. Yeah, just to get it, like just for me to get it, like that's what you're saying here. You're saying something that's a one-sided thing, and that's just what that is. Yeah.
So I think if the way you just described it absolutely you're using your terminology to it's like the individualism in New Age. It's like focus on self versus sort of like the completely dissolved self. It's like everything's in the hands of God, which is the religious sphere. Yeah, we can use those. We can use those names, but they're getting at the same essential truth. It's like condensation and structure. It's like in one, which is a healthy part of being a human being. But we also need this dissolving aspect so that we don't die in our crystallization over here. And there is this feeling so that we become comfortable in what seem like oppositions because they are a statement of how reality is. But we no longer feel compelled to say this one is right or that one is right. It's like there's elements of healthy elements to this one, and there are healthy elements of those. And I'll take both of those. And the other healthy parts, I'll try to leave those alone as best I can.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Should we wrap up there? As always, this is a lot of fun, guys.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Very, very good, and towards good things.
Yeah. So we'll continue this conversation.
Yeah. What's next?
So we've got. I still think we've got this what is living thinking. I think it's something very slippery, and how can we what is it in a positive light, but what is it in a negative light? I think that needs to. I think it would be good to try and tease that out together, because I think that was what felt uncomfortable about the question. Not the way you phrased it, but having enough time to develop how do you communicate if you want like simple answers, but you want to like create a nuanced picture of when something is alive in us. Sometimes it's healthy, but sometimes it's like deeply unhealthy, and I'm still not exactly sure how to do that. What do you think remains open, Brooke or Wanda?
Next time I'm going to talk more about mathematical thinking, because I did find some references
Mhm.
in the context of living thinking and imagination.
Yeah, I don't. So this, I was thinking earlier with this phrasing, living thinking, and that there's a language that isn't anthroposophical but uses similar word, which is what's alive in you, right? And I have wondered, like just now I was having this whole thought thing of like to disentangle what's alive in you from what's got you in a twist. You know, what's making you emotional feeling, like that's what I was thinking just now when with this. It's kind of like a pre-anthroposophical discussion, like
Yeah.
how what's like the difference is something I always enjoy. What is the
Mhm.
difference between um, living thinking and just being all upset or emotional in one way or the other, enthusiastic even, um, about something?
Living thinking versus being possessed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Free living thinking versus being possessed. Yeah.
yeah. So
I'm interested in, you know, so working the will through so that you have control of thinking, control of feeling, control of will. Uh, and I'm particularly interested in the feeling because, as we all experience, feelings are so connected to literally the physical body, and there's this feedback loop that happens. Um, and I would just like to think through like where the where the practices work to loosen that feedback loop.
It's the equanimity exercise, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yes, and it's easier said than done.
So now we have the theoretical answer. Now we just need to practice.
Yeah. I mean, I'm of the type that would like everything to come through analysis, of course.
But okay, I think that's healthy. That we talk about the virtues of analysis, but analysis paralysis
Yeah, yeah,
as well, because developing our own practice is essential to this path. But finding a practice that works for us, like Rhonda, you said, so like you did your Vipassana retreat, but so like 10 days, that was enough. Don't want to go back to it. But is there something that I can do in my life? It's like easily that I can commit to and really do commit to. And yeah, because at some stage the three of us, we want it to go beyond mere understanding, and we want it to become experience.
Yeah.
And if we only work with the understanding, it will only ever remain understanding and not experience, I would argue.
Yeah.
Perhaps not convincingly, but
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this, I think this is related, just that this, I have before had this realization, and I'm reminded of it right now, that I have just a kind of a fixation, one would almost call it, which you might have noticed, on examples. And I have an inkling, that that's really maybe for me to do, even though I'm constantly kind of demanding it from the people that I'm talking to. It's like this. Like at one point, Cordelia Brooks' mother, in some podcast or other, in some conversation or other with her, this kind of intimation that if you're in a study group and you're asking a lot of questions, what does that mean, and what does this mean, and what does that mean, which I can be like that. I really do want to know what these things mean, but I'm working towards this little bit better thing, maybe, which is to have, it's probably called patience, which is not something I've ever thought worthy to work toward. And now I feel differently about that. With that, the answers do come. It was what Cordelia said, and the answers come to you when you study, and you study brings them eventually. But I notice in myself, like, I want to know right now what you mean. I want to know right now what's an example of what you're saying.
Mhm.
So it's fine too, but I wonder for myself, like, is that me a little bit abdicating responsibility? For, I want you to explain that to me. Explain to me what you're saying. Spell it out.
I think that's reasonable. If we can't explain it, then then we should be questioning ourselves.
Okay, well, maybe I guess I was mentioning it because of the inkling that I have that there's something in there that's it's familiar, like young person's place, way of thinking, which is, you explain to me,
I don't see anything wrong with that at all. Personally, do you, Brooke?
We have to talk about this later because I have to go now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
of course.
okay.
Yeah,
Press
yeah,
end
yeah.
recording and don't leave until it uploads.
Okay.
Okay.